The other half of the diagram is I hope your project team is down here. If you've done your job correctly, then you have people who are knowledgeable and strongly motivated. They might only be knowledgeable about the solution that's required, not how to deliver it, and I'll cover that later. But the ideal team is here, and there are people in the periphery around this ideal team, such as in this quadrant. So what do you do with people who are here? They're strongly motivated, but they don't have expertise. Well, I hope that you identified that what we might want to do with the folk who are there is train them and give them experience, etc. But don't necessarily recruit them into your team if you have discretion and you have urgency and they don't have the skill set. Because if you have urgency, then you don't have the time to build the experience. Next area is what do we do with folk who are here? And if they are knowledgeable but not motivated, and a very common complaint from project managers is, or project leaders is, there's no commitment and buy-in around here. Well, that was because you didn't look in the mirror and recognize that you move people in that direction by making their what's in it for me linked to the project's goal, and you make them all aware of how achieving the goal gets them their reward, and to achieve the goal they have interdependence on each other. I also think in the same way as the governance community, this is probably where regulatory activities such as architectural or approvals communities live. So if you're doing a project that has some technical aspect of approval to, for example, its design and construction, either inside or outside the organisation, there should be expertise, and they should have a healthy degree of scepticism without being biased. So that might put them just slightly over the boundary on the left to right arrow, so just to be in the sceptical arena. The next area over is the more strongly sceptical, and if you do find people who have expertise and are strongly sceptical, you might like to pause and consider what do you do with them. And is this welcome back? I think at the very least it would be wise to listen to them. There's a piece of folklore that I've repeated more than once in the past, which is the wise person listens to all the advice they can get before they ignore it. I don't really mean to be quite so cynical about before you ignore it, but listening to advice is quick and cheap and may just tell you something you need to consider. I think I'd also like my test community, test role to come from somewhere over here. I think testing should have definitely skepticism, but perhaps even a desire to prove that things are not as they should be. When we've discovered that things are not as they should be, we can do a cost-benefit analysis on it that says, you're right, it's not as it should be, but the cost of making it whatever, better, perfect, outweighs the value we'll get. So I'd rather have a testing regime that's stronger than I need than one that's weaker than I need. And I'm left with two other quadrants. Let's fill those two other quadrants in and ask the question, what do we do with them? And I suggest to you that across this bottom left-hand corner, the whole of it, is the source of dysfunction and failure. And if you as a project lead or as a project participant are not calling this stuff out and dealing with it, then you are creating the sort of environment, or you're tolerating the sort of environment that's not fun to work in, not energizing, and it needs to be called out. And you need to escalate that through to the sponsor and say, the environment we have here is not one I want to work in. It's not one that's going to deliver the investment results that you want. So that's an analysis of what stakeholders look like. It goes way beyond what's in the textbook and is the 80-20 bit of this is the stuff that we need to pay attention to. All of the what's the goal and how do you achieve it is comparatively easy. However, this is not the full story here. So I need to give you a bit more story.